Oh, my next guest is the voice of the number one drive time sports talk show here in the San Francisco Bay Area for the great KNBR. You are Mr. Representative of that station. You're also a journalist, which is what I really respect. Brian Murphy, how are you doing, sir? You ready to do this today?
What is up, Cy Dog, man? It is a pleasure to be here, brother, and a long time coming to chat basketball with you and life and sports and whatever we want to do, man. I know we're going Warriors, but I just like talking to you, bro.
Same, dude. I mean, usually it's like 49ers text messages, but today it's all Warriors, and we could dive into the Warriors a little bit too.
One day
But
text
here we go.
messages,
This is
and
yeah.
they'll go to the National Archives.
Here we go. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Brian Murphy on Twitter at KNBR Murph. Murph, what happens if one day you're no longer with KNBR? Larry Krueger, I had him on a couple weeks ago, and he had to change his handle altogether. What is KNBR Murph going to turn into if someday you retire or, God forbid,
Yeah,
something
that
else happens?
is a great question. I have the answer to. I think we just kill the Twitter account, just kill it. And I just go. I just
Absolutely, man. You froze on me for a second there. I hope you can still hear me. I see your connection is strong. Anyways, Brian Murphy, while his internet connection is figuring itself out for a second there, you can listen to him every morning, I believe, from 6 to 10 a.m. on KNBR 680 and 104.5 FM in the San Francisco Bay Area. They are on both the FM and AM dial, and of course, you can catch them streaming at knbr.com. Murph, are you back with me? Oh, I love the awkward pauses. It's actually sometimes good for video and audio where you just have these pauses where just nothing happens for a brief moment. And by the way, Murph, if you can hear me and there's any issues, just leave and click that link and come right back. All right. I don't know if you can hear me there. Are you back? My wife's looking at me like, what's going on there? Oh, there we go. Murph is back. There we go. Okay.
I don't know what
All
happened there,
good.
brother. I mean,
I don't know.
anyway, I'm sorry. Usually
Who
it's
cares?
fine, and we roll. We roll.
It's part of the fun, dude. Sometimes it
Okay.
happens. I think you're gonna be good now. I was looking at all your little meters on the side here, dude. First off, man, you've been in the game for a long time. You started, I believe, with the San Francisco Chronicle. That was your first major job. I was there with you when you started at KNBR. What is the difference to you between your life as a journalist, writing content on print, or when I say print, I just mean text,
Mhm.
because everything's digital now,
Yeah.
versus you being the broadcast journalist? And I don't know if you can even call yourself a journalist. I remember our old boss Bob Agnew at KNBR always saying, "We are not journalists. We inform people and we entertain people."
Yeah.
What is the difference to you? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there is a difference. And Bob Agnew's right. And it's funny, I was just thinking about that today as I ducked out to do this little 30. We do our live reads all the time, and I think you'll be doing one coming up here. But
Yeah.
today during the show is very unusual. They asked me to do a 30-second Amici's read during a commercials break because the ad guy had to leave. And I was thinking, man, doing this 30-second Amici's read right in the middle of me doing my show just laid bare like how commercial radio is compared to the newspaper world. The newspaper world, the advertisement and the editorial never saw each other. We lived in different
Right.
worlds. In the radio world, advertising and editorial are mixed together. So you are partially far less a journalist and much more of an entertainer, and you're also a pitch man, for better or for worse. But you still get the essence, which is the editorial content, which is what you wanted. And the
Yes.
biggest difference is when I was a writer, I was mostly a beat writer, which meant I reported on events. I didn't opine on events. Whereas in radio, they encourage you to opine and say what sucks and what's great and what needs to change and what's better and what you're thinking that day. So much, 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 much more freedom editorially on the radio
Uh-huh.
side. So whereas in journalism, you're trying to be more of a truth teller, which is,
Yep.
not that I'm not tell the truth. But what I'm saying is you're trying to get the facts, you're trying to tell the story.
Yes.
Whereas in radio entertainment, you're trying to pitch an idea or convince somebody or make them. For Paulie and I, often we're trying to make people laugh because it's the morning
Mhm.
and we're not curing cancer. So we're trying to mix in sports with some energy and some comedy. So totally different assignment, but at its core, we're still talking sports.
Oh, you're absolutely right, man. Sometimes levity is healthy, so maybe you are curing cancer to a small degree. By the way, the Michi's reference, I always think of the great Ralph Barbieri, rest in peace. That's always to me what is synonymous with the Michi's is
Big time.
Ralph's just Italian voice. I don't know how to describe that, but it was just one
Well,
of a
he used
kind.
to do, I mean, if we want to digress, we're supposed to do 60-second live reads. I think Ralph's, and you were in the studio for something. I think some of those live reads might have gone 5 or 6 minutes.
Yes.
Some of those live. That's incredible. Ralph was a rule breaker in many, many ways. Rest in peace. He's a legend. He and Gary Radnich built that station. That's just a fact. And so those guys are the OG.
Well, I'll slightly push back on that, calling that a fact, because and sort of bore the audience with my little background here. But when I was a kid, I was a total news nerd, right? Like my dad would bring home the San Francisco Chronicle and the San Francisco Examiner. And as a kid, starting at like 7, 8 years old, I read the newspaper, which explains a lot of my childhood and maybe my issues today. But my mom would give me rides to school. And when she'd give me a ride to school, the radio was always on. And for some reason, what mom would always tune to is Frank and Mike, the morning show on KNBR.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my first exposure to talk radio besides just listening to music. And
Wow.
I was fascinated. I love these two. I really compare you and Paulie to them just because I feel like, Murph, you're more like the captain of the ship. You're keeping it afloat. You're keeping it going straight. You're directing it. But then Paulie's kind of like that. I don't want sidekick would be insulting. I don't know what the right term maybe is for his role, but he's definitely bringing the comedy and making it lighthearted. I'm not saying you're not funny, but I do see you two very similarly kind of succeeding them. And maybe they weren't the ones that carried KNBR, but I see that in you guys. And and I love that you're still there, man. That is awesome.
Well, that's, the highest compliment I could ever get. So thank you very much. And like you always say, man, Paulie and I know they're coming for us one day. They're gonna, and I'm gonna have to get it. I'm gonna have to get a new Twitter handle one day, Cyrus, but not today, buddy. Not today. So, but yeah. But Frank and Mike are obviously gods. I was saying Ralph and Gary built the when it became sports talk radio only. Because Frank and Mike used to play music. If they give you a Kenny Loggins, "This Is It," or a Rupert Holmes "Pina Colada" escape song, they used to actually play tunes. But Ralph and Gary were part of and Pete Franklin were part of the talk revolution. So anyway, those guys, we walk in their footsteps.
Oh, dude. And Pete, I love you bring up Pete Franklin. When I was a kid, I called into to KNBR twice as a kid. I called to Bob Fitzgerald once, who was hosting the nighttime show. I was like 12 years old, maybe. And I was complaining because Tim Hardaway had blown his knee out. Maybe I was a little older than 12 or something. But Avery Johnson came, Avery Johnson came in, and I loved him. And Fitz like completely talked me down. Was like, "No, you're a kid. You don't know what you're talking about. Avery Johnson sucks." They actually had a great run that year. And then I remember calling into Pete Franklin's show once just to get the toilet flush because he would flush you if you didn't like what you were saying. And I got flushed, and that was such a point of pride for me. Dude, you were a beat writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. Let's start here real quick. Who are you voting for your MVP, and who is your first team All-NBA if you were voting today?
Maybe wow. Okay, so NBA MVP, man, that's a great question. We were just talking about that just the other day because, it's interesting about narratives. There's that word. There's a word that's so bandied about these days, narratives. And I kind of I've come to hate the word a little bit because it's so overused, but it is sort of applicable here. And that I kind of feel like the NBA MVP award is frequently a narrative award. And that is not necessarily given to the best player of a year. The two guys we could always go to is Michael Jordan and LeBron James. You could always say that in their prime, they were the best players in the league every year, and they should have won the MVP every single year. But that's just not how the story goes. When it comes to voting for MVPs, you sort of want to reward a season, or you want to reward a story, or you want to reward somebody else. Sometimes it's just for variety's sake. So through the years when Jordan could have won them, people like Charles Barkley and Carl. And I kind of feel the same way, during LeBron's run, they were handing them out to like Dirk Nowitzki and guys like that. So anyway, that's a long way of saying that the narrative this year seems to be for Joel Embiid. It just seems to sort of be his time, right? Like it's he went through the process, and he's now arrived, and the Sixers are title contenders, and he's had such a sensational year, and it feels like the wind is in his sails. However, combating the narrative are these two seasons that Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo are having.
Yep.
And you could sit there and make an extremely strong argument for either one of those guys against Embiid. I mean, we could sit down and break the numbers and all that, but right now, if you're given it, and your original question was who do I get my MVP vote for? And the answer to your question is I'm still not totally sure. I may want to watch the last couple of games play out. Frequently, these things are won down the stretch, but to be honest, I'm sort of partial to Jokic. I am. I love his game. I love a big man who can pass, and I love what he does on the court and the impact he has on the court. So you talk about then you get to the argument, most valuable player. Like if you took that player off the court, how would their team be? And you could probably make that same argument for Embiid and for Giannis for sure. But I'm going to ride with Jokic, even though it's very unsexy. He's already won. See, in the narrative world, once you've won one, we'll cross you off the list. Unless you're like Steph, you win a couple, right? So Giannis has his, Jokic has his, and it's time for Embiid in the narrative world. And I wouldn't be mad if Embiid won. I wouldn't. I sort of understand the world we live in the NBA MVP world. It's sort of a rotating, it's like Embiid's time. But me, I'd probably give it to Jokic. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, look, Jokic is top 10 in all three major categories. That's incredible. I mean, that is just, I never thought I would see that. And I think we've only seen it maybe once ever. Don't quote me on that, but I'm going to give it to Giannis. Like you said, it's about the player that makes the biggest difference. The Nuggets are the 6th seed in the West, which granted would be like 2 or 3 in the East right now, but still Giannis is just, I mean, he's probably going to be the scoring title winner this year. I think, I mean, it seems to be geared that way. He's the reigning finals MVP, and all his game has done is go up. I really think he's underrated. I think he's underappreciated. Giannis is going to be one of these guys 15 years from now. We're going to look back and go, damn, that guy was really that good. And he's here right now doing this. But you're right. It's close. I don't know if there's any right answer.
I can't argue with a single thing you just said. I can't argue. I mean, I'd love to get in your face, but it does seem like you're cool on Embiid. You're not hot on Embiid, huh?
Embiid is just, look, if he wins it, I'm not going to be upset. I'll put it that way. You know, like if I had to make a pick, Embiid's incredible, man. All these guys are. I just love the big man is back. I love that the big man is back.
Totally agree with you on that. I think that's partially my Jokic bias is that I'm such an old guy with such gray hair that I love a traditional big. I love a traditional big, and I love I won't lie. See, all these writers who vote, whether they admit it or not, they have some sort of bias. I mean, that's the one thing I gets me mad about being a writer is when people think, oh, writers do this or that to get after a guy or to get revenge at a guy or something like that. Like it's a totally different topic for a totally different podcast. But Barry Bonds isn't in the Hall of Fame. They say because writers don't like his personality. It's not that. It's the very complicated relationship between steroids and the record book and baseball and all that. That's a whole nother topic. But I would never, in my years as a writer, ever, my job as a sports writer was to never let my personal feeling cloud, what the true story is. That's what the best journalists are. And I hope people know that. I hope people know that.
Yeah.
But like there's another digression we can get into, but we've had forces extra telling us to distrust anything you read in the news, which has been like the most distressing thing of my lifetime is that those of us who are journalists are being disregarded or chucked aside or called liars, or it's like, don't get me started here. But
no, dude, Murph, I'm just gonna add to. I got into a whole thing a couple weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, because I made a slight critique on a reporter at the Merc News. It was not a big deal. I wasn't calling out her credibility, but she was very sloppy in breaking news on Twitter. And I'm with you, man. I really don't like how much of the credibility in the news world in journalism has dipped. People mistrust information from legacy organizations, especially now more than ever. And I'm insanely critical over mistakes that happen like that, because the last thing I want is more distrust. And all I'm trying to do is just sit here saying, look, man, as a reporter, you have a huge role. Like, don't butcher that, like you've got to maintain that trust. And
that's a fair comment on your part. That's a fair comment on your part, and to call out something because you want a high bar. You want these things. So, all of saying that part of the reason I would vote for Jokic is because I love his style of play. Like, I understand we live it. And listen, we're the Warriors. You're the Locked On Warriors podcast. We love the 3-pointer, right? We live for the 3-pointer. It's good as the Splash Brothers, right? Oh. But I will admit that part of me, so I have partial season tickets at Chase Center I have 5 games a year, and our seats are behind the basket. And when I watched the Warriors come down, I watched the other team come down too, and they just fan out across the 3-point line. 5 guys fan out across the 3-point line. And I'm like, this is, I used to go to Warriors games with Bernard King and Purvis Short and all these guys back in the day. And it wasn't that. It was, I'm sounding like such an old fashioned guy here, but
no, you're not.
I miss the intricacies of a half court offense, of a mid range jumper, of working for a 2-pointer, of working for a bucket. That's why I was so pleased to see when Kansas won the national title on Monday night, the 2 biggest buckets of the game were down low by Frank McCormick. Those beautiful little 3-footers that he made. And I said, in a world of threes, I can't believe 2s won the national championship for Kansas. Believe me, I like the 3 and there's a place for it, but I just think that it's overemphasized in the game today. So Jokic, even though he does shoot the 3, Jokic brings me back to the days of, and like you said, this is all by way of spitting up what you said. You like the return of the big. It's great.
Yeah, dude. And you're right. The over-reliance on threes that's the only way I could say that the Warriors kind of ruined the game a little bit, because the Splash Brothers were so good at it that you had the other 29 teams going, 3-pointers are worth more than 2. We should be throwing up threes too. It's like, but you don't have the Splash Brothers doing it. Cut it out. Stick to the basics,
it works
man.
out when the Rockets go 0 for 27 in Game 7, it's a good thing.
You're absolutely right. When I got to bring up tonight's game, it's the Warriors and Lakers. When we talk about the MVP race, by the way, gambling has never been bigger in sports, and you could bet on that. You could bet on tonight's game and so much more with our official sponsor, BetOnline. And I'm looking at the spread right now. The line this morning, by the way, was the Warriors -13. And then the news came out that Westbrook, LeBron, and Anthony Davis are out. The line is now 14 in favor of the Warriors. I don't know if I'm touching that. But betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. By the way, the Masters, Brian, you have covered golf for a lot of your career. You are a golf aficionado. I am loving Tiger back. I think he was 1 under the last time I looked at the scoreboard. Yeah. Who's winning this thing? What's your pick?
Well, what a story. First of all, Tiger Woods. And I'll say this.
Oh, we might have lost Murph there for a second. While he's trying to come back, I'm going to quickly finish reading this copy of BetOnline. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Brian Murphy on Twitter at KNBR Murph. He is back. Yes, finish your thought, please, about the Masters.
Well, I was just going to say, what Tiger did today is yet just another chapter in this extraordinary chapter, and what he'll do tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday too. He's the single greatest winner I've ever seen in anything I've ever covered. And I know Tom Brady comes to mind and Michael Jordan comes to mind. That's really those are the only people that can be in the conversation with this guy. But having been next to him on a number of occasions and been at those events and to feel the force of his energy, and it's also the nature of the sport that he plays. It's an individual sport, obviously, but it's a team sport where he controls his destiny so much more. I mean, Tom Brady won a Super Bowl because Malcolm Butler intercepted a ball at the goal line, right? I mean, he didn't. Whereas Tiger, it's just all him. It is an extraordinary thing to witness. He is. I said out a tweet today. I just kind of joyous. That's one tough cookie, man. That is one tough cookie
agreed.
right there.
And this is the first time I could ever remember seeing Tiger without pressure on him. And I was actually kind of that piqued my interest, because with no pressure, I mean, that should drastically elevate your game, given mentally there's no hurdle. You just, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. I'm excited. I love seeing this. And by the way, is it safe to say that play in the Super Bowl you just mentioned, the Malcolm Butler interception, the worst play call in Super Bowl history?
Number one, the worst. Yes. We like to rank things in life. It's the number one worst call. Close behind hand calls in the 28-3 game. Sorry, Kyle.
I'm going to touch on Niners. No, it's okay. I'm going to touch on Niners near the end of this today. But we're talking Warriors still. What is a lot of people brought up and made a big deal about LeBron James making comments on his HBO show, The Shop, where he's basically in a barber shop, and he's got Maverick Carter there, one of his friends from high school or whenever, hosting this thing. What do you take anything from that? Like, do you really think LeBron could come to the Warriors next year, or is this just all strictly just entertainment?
Well, it's mostly entertainment, but I brought this up with Paulie today. I said, you don't think Joe Lacob hears that and there's part of him that's not intrigued? I mean, I'm just going to, the same way with Tiger Woods, I would never rule out Tiger Woods ever, is the same way I would never rule out Joe Lacob from trying to go get anything he wants. Now, does that mean it's a 50% chance or a 10% chance, or probably more of a 10%? I mean, again, what's LeBron going to want? What do you make? $45 million this year? What's he going to take a discount, a Chase Center discount? I don't think so. But I would just say, I mean, I don't see where the fit is. I don't see where the luxury tax fit is, all that stuff. But I would just say that I'm telling you, Joe Lacob, knowing Joe Lacob, he's the new Eddie D times 2. You know what I mean? He's gone to places that Eddie D hasn't even dreamed of in terms of luxury tax and everything, and also built his own stadium, which Eddie couldn't pull off either. True. So I would just say that I would bet you that Joe Lacob did not dismiss it outright. I bet you that Joe Lacob probably just said, doing like Paulie Mack, Joe Lacob impression, keep his number on file. We may send him a text later on. We'll see how it goes. Paulie has created this persona on our show of Lacob as this do everything Superman who conquers the world. And when the pandemic started, we had Lacob creating the vaccine and everything, So, I mean, Lacob he's like I said, you and I consider Eddie DeBartolo to be the gold standard of owners, right?
Without question.
I would say Lacob is right there, and maybe even he's gone deeper financially than Eddie ever did. You know what I mean? He really has.
Here's what I'm going to push back. Because you're right. Eddie D to me represented exactly how a sports owner should act, right? And he spoiled me. He spoiled me as someone growing up. I mean, I had the Niners all the way until my 20s, just being utterly successful in the best franchise in all of sports. This year was the first time. I'm glad you brought this up because I want to ask you this. This is the first time I have not felt that way about Joe Lacob, in the simple sense that they didn't spend a mid-level exception. I feel like Eddie D would never skimp. I understand. Look, the picture is this. They're not revealing this publicly, but the bottom line is they're owing money for those bank loans for Chase Center. And they took a hit with the pandemic. They took a hit with Dork Elvis making that one tweet, cost the NBA $1 billion plus, which is insane. The most expensive tweet ever. I don't think anything even compares to that. And I'm a little disappointed this year in Lacob in the fact that I think they could have gone a little more. They could have spent a little more. They could have added a backup big. I mean, I'm a little surprised they just never bothered to have a contingency plan for James Wiseman. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you agree? Or it sounds like
I think that's a fair comment. I would love to. I still want to see, like, what's he paying in luxury tax this year? Do you know? What's the number?
Oh, a ton. Look, an S load. That is all I can say to that. But they also made.
I would agree with you. It was curious about the big that they had no contingency plan. Did you just see about an hour before we started the podcast, Frank Kaminsky, the Suns wave Frank Kaminsky? Hey, man, you know what I mean? Bring them on, right? We need a rim protector. So, but anyway, I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's a fair criticism, but I am so blown away by this guy's demand for excellence. He generally, I know he has a major ego like they all do, and he loves to kind of do media sometimes and get stroked. But for the most part, he stayed out of it. For the most part, and he when he came to San Francisco, when he came to town and said, the banner's lonely up there. We were like, dude, what are you talking about? Yeah. You're not winning a championship. He's won 3. And I'm not ruling out this year. Are you ruling out this year?
I am absolutely not ruling. Like I'm still standing firm that if this team is healthy, Steph comes back, 100%, Clay, 80%. If we get 80% Clay, I'm happy. Yeah, they're winning the chip. I don't see anyone stopping them. I really don't.
The Suns are a problem.
Maybe. I mean, do you remember Christmas Day? I mean, that memory has not faded for me. They went into Phoenix and slapped those boys around, and then when Phoenix came here without Stephen Curry, they had to squeak by a victory. I'm almost more worried about the Grizzlies at this point. But
great point. And funny you mentioned that because I was realizing after we finished our little MVP talk, neither of us gave love to John Morant. He needed a mention.
For
He needs a
MVP?
mention. Yeah.
Here's why I'm not giving him or Devin Booker, because people mentioned Devin Booker too. I mean, look, the Suns have the best record. Very valid to mention him. The Grizzlies without John Morant, I believe, are like what 19-2, 20-2 without him. I was advocating for Stephen Curry until about a month and a half ago for MVP, just because I feel like of all the players who impact their team that much positively, I don't think anyone beats Steph. I know Jokic and Giannis are right up there, but Steph just didn't have the numbers by his own standards, right? Narratives. We go back to that, right? The narrative just was not supporting Steph. So I don't look. I love Ja. I'm not hating on him, but I just don't think he deserves MVP for that reason.
Well, you make a fair point. I just thought he gets a mention. He's a guy to watch in the coming years too, for sure. It's funny. Draymond just said Devin Booker on his podcast yesterday, which is interesting because he's missed some games too. And you're right about Ja. Ja has missed a huge chunk of games, and they've won without him, which is amazing. And you're right. I think Memphis might be actually a physically tougher matchup than the Suns. I just fear DeAndre Ayton. I fear the big in a slowdown game where you're not playing threes, and the Warriors. I mean, is it Looney versus Ayton or Draymond versus Ayton? That's the one thing they don't have. But you're right. I mean, the Warriors have matched up better against the Suns than they have against the Grizzlies. And as we all know, the playoffs are all about matchups, man. It ain't about the regular season. It's about how will you match up in a 7-game series where you're going to exploit each other game after game, where they're going to try to take away what you do best and where you're going to try to take away what they do best. And then it becomes coaching and performance, but it does become a slowdown game. And, I was just reading Kawakami's piece with Kerr about maybe they're going to have to do it by shooting threes this postseason. Usually you can't. And he was like, maybe with Jordan Poole's emergence and the lack of a 5, that they're going to have to go small a lot with Clay, Poole, and Steph in the playoffs. It would be sort of a new way to do it. Now, I don't know if you can do it that way, though.
I don't know either, man. And because you're right. They don't lack someone who can give them easy buckets. And they've always had that in all their championship runs. Even in 2015, people forget that they were down 2-1 to the Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. And there was an old school player of theirs named David Lee, who lost the starting job to Draymond, I believe, that season. And he came in and was giving them left and right easy post-up buckets and honestly changed the momentum of that series. Very easy to overlook that. And the Warriors, I don't know if Bjelica or Kuminga, those are the only 2 post-up players they have, really, that can give them those easy type buckets. And Looney. I disrespect Looney a little bit because he has actually developed a solid post-up game as well. Yeah, you're right. That's the one weakness. That is the one concern I have, no doubt. We'll see, though. And here's the point I make to everyone, and tell me if you disagree, because I feel like you watch Bay Area sports as closely as I do, especially the Warriors. Have you ever seen them lose a game when they're fully healthy and the urgency is there? Because I never have, ever.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is 2016.
Yes.
That's the only thing. And that was such a freak occurrence of events, with
no
suspension.
Bogut.
No Bogut. Good point.
And Iggy was hurt. Steph was hurt. I'm saying if they're fully healthy.
Okay. And then you go to 2019. In 2019, they were not healthy. I mean, Clay and Durant get hurt. So they have not lost a playoff series, when they are fully healthy and have the urgency in this era. You'd have to go back to the Clippers in 2014.
Yes.
When the Game 7.
Yes. And even then they were hurt. Even then they were dealing with injuries too. I think Bogut got hurt in that series as well. They were suddenly relying on Festus Ezeli, who was like, a rookie or a second-year player at that point. Yeah, so that's what gives me solace, and I hope Dub Nation feels the same way. It's like, for some reason, this is a team that they've had such a long run now that they have to feel like if the urgency is not there, they get lackadaisical fast, man. They get bored quick.
I think what's interesting, Cyrus, is that one of the things that if you live through the Cohan era from like 95 to like, I'll say 15, take out the We Believe, but basically from 95 to about 12 or whatever it was, that about 17-year run. And again, I'm subtracting We Believe, and then the next year when they actually won more games in the next year and they didn't make the playoffs. But
you're right. Good knowledge. What
we forgot is that all those great teams, the Bulls in the 90s, the Lakers, Shaq and Kobe, and Allen Iverson Sixers, and all those teams, they were doing what we're doing now, which is like the regular season means nothing. It means nothing. It means nothing. And so it's like we now have learned in the last 5 years what all those other cool teams were doing in the 90s and the 00s and the 10s. It's just like, just cruise until mid-April, and then S gets real in mid-April. Like April 16th, the season starts. And I feel like everything that's happened prior to this, I mean, of course, some of it's important. Jordan Poole's emergence being the number one thing, probably, right? Clay working his way back from the Achilles is a big thing, right? But bottom line is like what you're saying is that come April 16th, there will be the urgency. There will be the health. They've lined up the health other than Wiseman and the unfortunate Curry foot injury, but we're assuming he's going to be okay. I mean, I'm not Celebrini. I couldn't tell you, but assuming they've lined up the health, they've lined up the urgency, they've developed, they're ready to go. And then let's start a whole new season, in the only season that matters. The only season that matters.
That is
and so
right,
to your point, when they're in those environments, we've seen them always triumph. Always.
Yeah.
And so,
always. And you're right. 2016 is that one. And even 2016, I'll also throw out that the NBA literally helped LeBron by suspending Draymond in Game 5. I mean, momentum is such a vitally important variable in sports that there's no measuring stick for it, right? I mean, but it's real and it impacts the game. And that took it all away from the Warriors and turned that thing around. Even Richard Jefferson, just last week, a member of that Cavaliers team, was on national TV on ESPN confirming that suspension made the difference in the series, which made me feel good because they don't lose that series otherwise. And that's also why I never feel bad about Kevin Durant coming here, because that was a nice consolation prize for preventing the repeat and preventing a chip with that 73-win season. Murph, I love you, man. I got to ask quickly about Niners because I guarantee you're following this stuff. Hugo Samuels, dude, he's disgruntled now. Jimmy G's still with the team for no good reason. What are your thoughts about the Niners, dude?
Jimmy G, man. Oh my God. We got to Jimmy G on the Locked On Warriors. I love it.
Yes.
The Debo thing, I'm not going to worry. I think they're just negotiating right now, and he's seeing receivers getting paid. He wants to get paid. I get it. He will get paid. All right. That's my opinion is that that will sort itself out. I can't believe the Jimmy G thing. They completely biffed it. He should not be on this team right now. They should have some sort of compensation for him. They misjudged or overvalued whatever trade talks they had from the end of the Rams game to before his surgery. I don't care what they say about, and you've heard defenders say, well, he had the surgery. Nobody wanted to make the trade until he had the surgery. I'm just telling you this. They had one job in this offseason. That job was to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo and usher in the Trey Lance era, and they have not done it. They've screwed it up. So, I mean, if they settle it by the summer, will everything be okay? Maybe we'll go with all's well that ends well. If by mid-August Jimmy Garoppolo's a Panther or whatever, maybe that's cool. But it is an unnecessary bit of turbulence and storm. And if you're Trey Lance, I mean, he seems like a nice kid. He's 20, but he's probably like, what's going on? He's like, what's going on? He's like, is it my job? I mean, he's like, wait a minute, am I the guy? Or you're saying now Jimmy's the guy? I mean, so Kyle and John have done a really nice job of restoring, the Niners as a contender. They're in the conversation now. We can go over some of the misses, but the Bosa and the Debo picks have been genius, and they put them in the championship game 2 of the last 3 years. So big picture macro, I'm enjoying where they're at, but they're having a terrible offseason. They're having a really bad offseason, and DJ Jones is gone. Laken Tomlinson's gone. Heck, even Raheem Mostert, Mike McDaniel. I mean, I get it. Coaches leave and all that. But right now, if you had to tell me, are the Niners better or worse than they were on the NFC Championship day against the Rams? A, they're worse. And B, they haven't solved the Garoppolo situation. And poor Trey Lance, it must be, confused. I know they're saying, don't worry, it's yours. But solve it, Kyle and John. Solve it, okay? And so
it didn't help that Jimmy G's like, I'm gonna have this shoulder surgery now. It's wait, what?
I need to know the real. I mean, nobody's ever gotten the smoking gun story on that. Just was it an act of vengeance? Hey, he himself said we had him on after week 1. Do you remember they opened? Where was their opening this past year? It wasn't Detroit, was it? Where'd they open this past
year?
Open? It was
on the road. I think the first 2 games were on the road.
Yeah, it was on the road, and Trey Lance threw a touchdown pass in that first game. Remember? Come on.
You're right. His first pass ever.
It was Detroit.
His first pass ever. Yes.
Was it Detroit? Yeah, and they let the Lions back in the game late. Remember that?
Yes, there you go.
But anyway, we had him on after that, and the Trey Lance and remember the color commentator for Fox that game was Brady Quinn, I think. It was one of those pretty boy quarterbacks. Either Brady Quinn was or Mark Sanchez. Mark Sanchez, that's who it was. And he said after Trey threw that touchdown, and Jimmy came over and gave him a hug, and Mark Sanchez said on Fox, he goes, "Hey man, I've been in those shoes." He goes, "That's not an easy hug to give." So then we had Jimmy on the show that Wednesday, and I hit him with that. I said, hey, Mark Sanchez said on Fox, that's not an easy hug to give. And Jimmy G, this is the closest he's ever come. He goes, he's not wrong. And we were like, ooh. So, I mean, Jimmy played with like Jimmy was hurt, understandably. He was told by the Niners, you're not good enough. We're moving heaven and earth to get somebody better than you in here, right?
Yep.
Now just be a good boy and quarterback us this year, right? So, of course, Jimmy's got some red ass to him. Now, that shoulder that's all by way of saying, was the shoulder surgery a strategic hit on the Niners? I mean, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm just saying, Jimmy was pissed and hurt, So the Niners have a situation on their hands. They better solve it, man. They better solve it. I need Trey Lance week 1. That's all I'm saying.
Agreed. And if that was a dig, it was subtle and it was beautiful because Jimmy G's been amazing when it comes to keeping whatever his negative emotions are down below and not revealing that. 2 questions and I'll let you go because I've had you for 35 minutes. You get up at an obscene hour every day and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I've lived through that schedule. It is brutal. Just to give people context, when I met Brian Murphy, you were not hosting the morning show yet. Your hair was all brown. And then I remember after like the first year, all of a sudden I'm like, where did all those grays come from? You had no grays, dude.
No,
but you also didn't have children. I do also want to commend you on a beautiful family, brother. Like,
thanks, brother.
Like, it's picture perfect, man. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? I hope it's the same, but
right.
Beautiful family, brother.
So you gotta believe your life is what you put on Facebook, right? That's
So here, I think when Paulie was on here a few weeks back or a month ago, we brought this topic up. Which arena, and there's nothing logical with this question, but which arena has bigger ghosts that they need to shed? Or in which stadium, I guess? The Niners Stadium or Chase Center?
Which one has a bigger curse right now?
Yes, exactly. Hence the no logic.
That's pretty easy for me. I'd say it's Levi's.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I'd say it's
Totally
Levi's.
agree with you.
I mean, so and I know this will anger part of your listenership here, your viewership here, but I'm a San Francisco guy. I'm a Giants guy. I'm a 49ers guy. So the Warriors moving to San Francisco did not offend my soul the way it offended so many people's soul. I mean, in fact, I'm old enough to know my dad used to talk about going to see the Warriors in San Francisco in the 60s.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, and I get it. I have very close friends on the Oakland scene who are just like, they're just like gutted and they never want to go to Chase. I get it. Whatever. That's it. I mean, that's their hill they want to die on. So for me, the move to San Francisco, while it did create some broken feelings for sure,
It did.
I would say that for the most part, you can like literally see, like they stayed. You know what I mean? It's just like changing your BART ride. And like, I understand.
You're absolutely right.
Oakland
Yes.
crowd. I also, as a San Francisco Giants fan and 49ers fan, I get kind of pissed at the Oakland crowd that tries to diminish the San Francisco sports crowd in some way. I'm like, whoa. We brought Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Joe Montana, and Jerry Rice. I think we know what we're doing here. All right. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Stop talking about the San Francisco sports fan like he's some sort of diminished or second-rate citizen. We could flip that script pretty easily and say, where's your Joe Montana? Where's your Jerry Rice? Where's your Ronnie Lott? Where's your frickin' Mays, McCovey, Will Clark, Kevin Mitchell, Kim Lincecum, Buster Posey? You know what I mean? So we know we got a little street cred over here in the 415, all right? So don't get me started on that. But I would say moving to Santa Clara was devastating.
Oh,
devastating. And I say that my parents grew up in Mountain View, so I got no shade towards the South Bay, but that's not where the 49ers should be. And so it's devastating. And is it a coincidence that they, are losing Super Bowls now down there? You know what I mean? They're losing balls. I mean, I think the Warriors could win a championship this year and make Chase nice and pretty. But I don't know. Levi's is a tough go, man. So that's my answer.
Dude. It's not too late to tear that thing down and come back to San Francisco, man. It's not too late.
Cyrus, if there's another thing that Lacob, by building where he built, you look at that stretch now where the Giants play, Oracle Park, and then just a half a mile down is Lacob and the Warriors.
Right.
If you just went down they call them that India Basin dog patch, there's the Niners could have built down there.
And they still can. Or is it too late now? Did that ship sail?
I mean, Levi's is $1 billion stadium. They ain't moving.
Oh, that's brutal, man. That's brutal. And you're right, dude. I do the podcast with Rick Barry, which, by the way, anytime you want to come on that, you're welcome. And Rick always talks about that. He goes, we used to play at a place called the Cow Palace. Like the Cow Palace. Like that is
Well,
a
I remember
palace.
my dad talks about going to what we now call Bill Graham Civic, the San Francisco
Is that what
Civic
they call it
Auditorium.
now?
Well, now the Bill Graham Civic is the one right by City Hall. You know, the Civic Auditorium.
Oh,
where you
yeah,
go
the
see-
concert venue. Yes,
where
yeah.
you've gone and seen whatever. I saw Oasis there. Paulie goes and sees the Dead. I don't know, or
I
Fish
saw
or whatever.
Adam
He goes to.
Sandler there. Yeah, I saw a few years back.
Nice, dude. So
Norm
that's where the Warriors-
McDonald. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Rest in peace. But that's where the Warriors
I know.
played in the '60s, when my dad used to talk about seeing Wilt Chamberlain there. So anyway,
They played. I didn't know they played there. They played in that little place. Basketball.
well, that was their
games?
main. That was their main arena. The Cow Palace was the secondary arena.
Oh,
The Civic
I did not know
Auditorium
that.
was their main. When they moved here in '62, the Civic Auditorium was their home.
And your buddy Peter Hartlub, I think, wrote an article a few years back about the origins of the Golden State name, which was a fantastic article. Where the Warriors, for one season, actually called both San Francisco and San Diego home as a ploy to get that arena built in Oakland.
Yeah, Muley, like any owner, was putting his gun to the head of the Civic leaders, and he was like, "I'm going to strip San Francisco off my name and call myself Golden State. I'll go wherever the hell I want."
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy, man. And I'll let you go with this, dude, because I've taken up way too much of your time, because I could do this for 3 hours with you, dude. That's how much fun I have every time we talk. Dude, your morning schedule. I did morning radio for 3 years, getting up at 3:30 in the morning. I don't know what time you get up. It is brutal. How do you have the energy to make people's lives happy when you yourself are getting up at that time in the morning?
That's a funny question, man, because you know the deal. Well, first of all, it's the job. You got to do the damn job, kids. All right. So you got to be a pro. That's why I try to tell my kids. You talk about raising my kids. I'm up their rear ends a bunch of times about, hey, man, you got to be a pro. You got to do your job. You got to handle your business. So I was raised that way. You know what I mean? And so what's the job assignment? The job assignment is that you better be on the air with energy and with effort and with enthusiasm, as the great Jim Harbaugh would say, with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. Right. And so I'll tell you what helps, buddy, is working with your friend and mine, Paulie Mack. Because that is one constant source of energy and humor, and you know that. And he he is the dream partner. Paulie's never had a bad day on the air, ever. And it doesn't matter. He could be having a bad day off the air, but like his great rock and roll idols, like David Lee Roth and Steven Tyler and Jerry Garcia, all the guys that he idolizes, those guys never brought a bad day on stage. Those guys they rocked out when they hit the stage, and his boys from Kiss too, right? So when
and Bono,
when Paulie hits the stage, I can see the rock and roll performer in him, and I have no choice but to get caught up in that energy. So that's a huge part of it.
I love it, man. And anyone can listen if you're here in the Bay Area. It's 6 to 10 every morning on KNBR 680 and 104.5 FM.
Or as we now say, Cyrus, because we now nobody has a car with an AM radio. Now we say you can stream it on your streaming device.
There you go. And anything you want to plug, man. I know you've authored books. You can still make money off that. So plug all that stuff. What do you got going on?
We have a book coming out this summer. The great Brad Mangian, the best sports photographer in the Bay Area, in the country, maybe. He has these incredible pictures of Buster Posey. So we made a book about Buster called 28. It's coming out this summer. And it's pretty cool. What we did that was different this time was, instead of me writing my boring words, we picked 10 players, and I interviewed those players about Buster and then wrote the essays in their first person. So it's Barry Zito's first person thoughts on Buster, Matt Cain's first person thoughts on Buster, Brandon Crawford's, Hunter Pence, Logan Webb, Gabe Kapler, Bruce Bochy, Kruk and Kipe. It's really cool to read their words and interspersed with the beautiful pictures. Should be a really pretty book. It's called 28. It's coming out this summer. And then I would just say that if anybody has any charitable endeavors, I'm in my second year as the co-chair of the Giants Community Fund that runs the Junior Giants. It's near and dear to us. We're trying to change kids' lives. Every summer, we give them not just baseball, but life lessons and community, and we give them literacy programs and anti-bullying programs. And it's just a beauty. When we meet the kids, it's goosebump city, the stories you hear. So if anybody has the chance to volunteer to coach your local Junior Giants league, we're always looking for volunteer coaches. Or if you just have a kid this summer who needs something to do, enroll them in your local Junior Giants program. It's a phenomenal program, and thank you for your support.
And I'm guessing they just Google Junior Giants. Is that the easiest way?
JRGiants.org. JRGiants.org. Yeah, or just write in Junior Giants and how to join and how to volunteer. And of course, we take donations too. We're always the Junior Giants stretch drive, and you can get like your Willie McCovey souvenir if you give a couple bucks. And
nice.
Anyway, so it's near and dear. It's been a year two of being a co-chair of that has been very time consuming and huge, but we're trying to do great things. And my wonderful co-chair, Kelly Larkin Coover, she's the brains of the operation. And but that would be the one thing I would say, if you can help on a charity, the Junior Giants is ready and waiting, and thank you in advance.
Oh, and I'm sure that's rewarding. And how old are your kids now?
So Declan's in 8th grade. He's on the classic 8th grade New York City, Washington, D.C. Philly trip right now with his team classmates, which is pretty cool, right? How
Amazing.
about that, buddy? And then little Rory's old. I still have a 4th grader, dude. Can you believe that? Oh my God. So
I
I'm
love
going to
their
be
names, dude. I love the names. It's so Irish. You're keeping it to your roots. I respect that, dude. I love the Irish
Murphy,
culture, man.
You know, the whole deal.
My stepson's Connor. So
yeah. Lee
right
Hammer just got back from Dublin, Ireland, dude. So if Hammer can go to Dublin, Ireland, then any of us can go to Ireland.
Well, I'm going to Maui next year for the formal wedding. If you want to come to the bachelor party, you're welcome to. I always say my wife, we've been together on and off for like 20 something years. We're finally formally, doing this.
Nice.
You're welcome to the bachelor party if you want to come. And then, but that's my next trip is going to be Ireland. I cannot wait to do that. So,
you can surf in Ireland.
I know it's cold, but I know you can. Yes.
You can
and Barry Zito surfs. If you ever want to talk about him with that too, I used to interview him all the time about surfing waves. And one piece of advice, Murph, if you don't mind, and this is obviously in levity, lock your doors, back up your files. Because if people don't realize this, didn't you write a book one time and then someone broke into your car in San Francisco and took your computer and
see this gray hair, buddy?
Cringe thinking about that story, dude. Because I'm not a writer at your level, but I write too. And if that ever happened to me, I'd just be crushed. Well, I don't know how you.
I went to the fetal. I mean, you bringing that up has just caused me.
I'm sorry, dude.
There's an ulcer gathering right now. I'm going to toss and turn all night tonight.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just for a long story short, I had Neil Hayes and I wrote a book about Tiger Woods' freshman year at Stanford called The Last Putt. We're pretty proud of the book. Nobody read it, but we're proud of it. But I finished my last 3 chapters. It was 27,000 words on the day after Christmas, 2007. And I walked in, I collapsed on the floor, and I told my wife, I'm all done. I'll save it tomorrow on the disc. And then I went to work, and then I had to park at the Sutter Stockton garage because I had to MC. Ready for this, dude? Do you remember the bowl game that used to play at AT&T Park at Oracle Park?
Yes.
Maryland was playing Oregon State, and I was hosting the lunch at the St. Francis Hotel. I don't know. They said, dude, go. I mean, it's like, what do? Like, you go introduce the Maryland coach and the Oregon State coach. And I parked in the Sutter Stockton garage. I came back, and there was just a spider web of broken glass in my back seat, and my laptop was gone. I went to the fetal. I did the manly thing, Cyrus, and went to the fetal position on the ground there.
What are you going to do? What else are you going to do? I mean, I still think that that story still constantly makes me aware of backing up my files because
it's cold. I get cold sweat.
Oh, dude. Well, I'm sorry to bring that up, man. I'm really sorry. I hope that's a learning lesson for people. If you take anything away,
here's the positive news. I am proof to tell you I survived.
And you can follow Brian Murphy on Twitter at KNBR Murphy. Your content there is fabulous, and you can listen to him every morning from 6 to 10 on KNBR 680 and 104.5 FM, and streaming at knbr.com, where all your podcasts are there as well. I'm guessing they save all the shows, and you can listen to all of them there. I've been made aware of some shows that I need to tune to, so always go to knbr.com when I check it out. And dude, keep up the great work, man. You and Paulie's energy is fantastic. I love spending this time with you. I'm sorry it took up so much of your time. Love you, man, and keep it going, brother. Hope to have you on again soon.
Love you, brother. Pleasure to be on, and look forward to the next one.
Thanks, brother. That's Brian Murphy, everyone. Take care. Later.